Okay, thanks, Richard, Martin, and Jan, to stay here today with us, Quarks Club, talking about the chapter 5 of the book Quarkus in Action. Today, let's talk about not me, but the Jan. We'll talk about tests and how can write tests in Quarkus application using Mockito and some stuff related to tests. And I'd like to say that now Quarks Club is sponsored by JetBrains, and today we will draw a JetBrains license. And at this moment, the Richard is the winner. And okay, I think we can start now. Thanks again, Ian and Martin, for your time to stay here with us talking about your great job. Uh, Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, let me share my screen. Oh, you'll have to give me permission to share my screen. It says I can't do that.
Yeah, I need. Okay, try again. Perfect.
Okay, here we go. Okay, testing. So, in this chapter 5, we'll talk about testing. I will basically now go through all the stuff that's covered in the book and a little bit more. I won't be coding much. I will rather be showing the code that is the final code that the reader will write over the course of reading this chapter. So I will show the code that's in the GitHub repository. Um, yeah, let's see how we test Quarkus applications. Um, I hope you can see my IDE. I have opened the project with all the tests that the reader will create over reading chapter 5, and I added a few things on top. It's all based on the reservation service, which I guess Martin talked about last time. So people should be familiar. If there are questions about it, I can explain something again. But yeah, I'll assume that people are familiar with what this, at least partially familiar with what the services do. Yeah, so the reservation service is the service once again that manages reservations for cars, and we will add some tests to it that just verify that it does what it should be doing. So let's start by running the application in that mode. I'll just run it straight in the IDE because that's pretty cool. And yeah, let's start by saying that the test framework in Quarkus is based around JUnit, JUnit 5. So these are the relevant dependencies that we will be using today. Two of them are actually extensions. That's Quarkus JUnit 5, that's an extension. This extension is only used for testing. It doesn't affect your application in production mode. So yeah, we have the scope test here, of course. And another extension we will be using is JUnit 5 Mockito for the Mockito integration. Also, scope test, everything is scope test. And we'll be using the REST assured library, which hopefully people are familiar with, which serves for testing an application's exposed API over HTTP, basically with a over a REST, some kind of REST client. Um, so let's see some tests. I have them ready here. Um, when you write tests for a Quarkus application, you'll be using this Quarkus test annotation. That one is quite important because, well, you can write a JUnit test without this annotation, of course, but in that case, it will be a plain unit test and that will not actually run Quarkus. When you want to test a Quarkus application, you probably want to actually run the application. And the thing is that the test will run in the context of the application. So if you use this Quarkus test annotation on your test class, it actually tells JUnit to use the Quarkus JUnit 5 extension and start the full application for you. And within the same JVM, where if you're running in JVM mode and if you're running in unit test mode, it will in the same JVM your test will run uh, with the application together. So that means you can use things like CDI injection, for example. So let's show a basic unit test reservation repository test. Let's start with this one. This one is the easiest one. So we have this test called reservation repository test. And you see that we use injection here. This test verifies the reservations repository class, which is a class that handles creating reservations for cars. So in this test, let's have a look at what the reservations repository actually does. It's a we have this, in-memory reservations repository. For now, it's in memory. In the over the course of the book, it will be migrated to be stored in a database. But for now, it's a repository that's purely in memory. And in this test, we will be testing this repository as a bean. You see, it has a CDI annotation, singleton, so it's a CDI bean. That means you can inject it into your test because your test will be running in the same JVM in the context of the application. So, and the test is pretty simple. We create a new reservation. We set a start day, which is like today plus 5 days, and the end day for the reservation will be today plus 12 days. And yeah, we set a random car ID because it doesn't really, it's simplified, so it doesn't really check whether this car exists. And we test that after that, we can run the save method of the repository. And after that, we test that it's actually saved, that we get an ID assigned to the reservation, and then we try finding all reservation in the repository and verify that it contains the newly created reservation. So that's pretty straightforward. How to run this test? We already spoke about continuous testing. So I'll just enable continuous testing by pressing R. You see, it's already running this test. I have some more tests that I'll be showing later. You see, 3 tests are passing. One of them was this reservation repository test. I can also show it in the dev UI, hopefully.
Yeah, you can also enable the output, so it shows which tests are being run.
Yes. There's this O shortcut O for enable test output, and now when you run the tests, when I press R for rerun now, it shows exactly what tests were run. So one of them was this reservation repository test. All of them passed. Let me show you the dev UI as well. Because dev UI is one of the coolest things that Quarkus offers. And in the dev UI, you can also view the results of your tests. So there's a page, continuous testing. Here you can see that we have 3 tests, all of them passed, how long each one took. You can also rerun them. And you can, another cool thing, the testing output, you can actually view just the testing output separately if you switch this log in the bottom of the screen. There's this log viewing window. By default, you get the regular server log, but you can switch to the testing tab, which will show you now only the output of the testing of the testing instance of the application. So here you get only the logs related to your tests, which is pretty neat. Yeah, and of course, it's all running as continuous testing. We already talked about that. So whenever you change something, you will see the result immediately. Like, I don't know, let's make the test fail just for fun, and you see that the test now. You just click the the terminal window, and it reruns the test, and this test failed. You see it immediately when you start, then your test starts failing. I've changed it back, and it's everything is passing again. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, this was a very easy, simple test. Let's have a look at another test, the reservation resource test, because yeah, so we tested the reservations repository now, which is the class that just handles the persistence of reservations. Now let's have a look at the reservation resource, which is a REST resource that exposes operations over the repository. It can create new reservations, and it can return information about availability, return which cars are available on between specified dates, for example. So let's write a test for that. We show, yeah, let's have a look at this test reservation IDs. And here we are using, as I already mentioned before, the REST assured library, because we are talking to the reservation resource, which is a REST endpoint. So in this case, we won't be injecting we could also just inject an instance of reservation resource because it is a CDI bean. But in this case, we want to make it a bit more fun. We want to talk to it using the regular REST API. So when you're testing a REST API, you can use these test HTTP endpoint and test HTTP resource annotations. You specify which REST endpoint you want to actually test, and you can get the URL of where this resource actually sits. So this URL will be filled. I will show you. Just add to string or whatever. No, of course, like this reservation resource. When I run this test, blah, 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 I will this time I'm running the test in the IDE, not just to show that it's possible. It's not as part of the continuous testing. Here you see that the URL of the reservation resource was filled with the actual URL where this REST endpoint sits. So this way you can inject the URLs of the endpoints in your application, and you don't have to build these URLs yourself. So let's delete this again and switch back to the main terminal.
Probably it would be good to mention that by default, the testing application runs on 8081, but you have it running on 8181.
Yes, that is because we had to change the regular HTTP port to 8081 because yeah, we have five microservices. One of them uses 8080, one of them 8081, another 8082. So we had to change the HT test port for this one because we can't use 8081 because it's used for the regular HTTP port for the production port, or not just production. In the dev mode, it also uses exposes the application itself on this port. Yeah. So
Sorry, just to
mhm.
also say you can set it to 0 and then it will basically run on any free port by random.
Yes, that's another option. Yes. So what does this test do? Um, yeah, it what does it do? It creates a reservation. It posts a reservation over also just like the previous test. Ju- just that in this case it does that over REST and not over a plain Java call to a CDI bean. So we create a reservation instance, fill it with some data, car ID, start date, and date, and we send it over a post HTTP request to the URL that we kind of injected. We send it as JSON, and the body of the request will be the reservation serialized into JSON, and then we declare what we expect the results to be. So we expect the status to be 200, and we expect that the ID field inside the body will not be null. That means the server will actually assign an ID to this newly created reservation and return it. So yeah, if I again just run this test separately and straight from my IDE, yeah, that's it. Nothing fancy. Um, what else? Mocking now, or if Martin, you have anything, just stop me and I could explain anything extra. But
One
other
more
than
thing,
that, I think yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
mention that given is sorry, rest assured given, exactly the line on which Jan is currently positioned, is automatically configured for the testing application by the Quarkus JUnit 5 extension. So you don't need to always inject the full URL as is done in this test. It should be enough just to use given that path somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you,
I think the default URL is the root of the application, right? As far as I know. If I
if you have Quarkus test, then it will be automatically configured for the
yes,
tested application.
yes, for the root of the application. Just in this case, I'm not calling the root of the application, but one specific REST resource of the application.
Yeah. But like you don't need to inject the full URL like it's done here with the test HTTP endpoint. You can just do given when that path slash
Yeah, but
availability.
then yeah, that well, I think it's cleaner to inject it because then you always get the right path in there instead. Otherwise I would have to like hard code it as a string here, right? And if I change something, if I change the actual path of the resource later, it won't be changed in the test, right? So this is like a clean solution. But yes, of course you can also just use the write the reservation path, pass it to rest assured directly here. That also would work. Yes. Okay. Let's move on to mocking. Um, so um, um, mocking. We will be testing the reservation resource, but the reservation resource Yes, it's availability method. Yes, the availability method that uh, returns information about which cars are available at specific dates. That uses a GraphQL client to the inventory service, and you generally don't want the tests to unless this unless you're writing full system integration test. You don't want the you want to also be writing tests that only depend on a single application. You don't want your test for the reservation service to actually depend on having the inventory service running as well. And because this method availability connects over a GraphQL client to the inventory service, in this case, we will want to replace this inventory client with a mock so that we remove the necessity to actually run inventory service together with with reservation service to make this test work. So if you have a look at the reservation service and how it works, there's this field inventory client, which is a GraphQL inventory client. It injects a GraphQL client. And this GraphQL client is a CDI bean. So we can mock it, replace it with a mock. How do we do that? It's not hard. And at the beginning of your test, you create a mock of this GraphQL inventory client uh, interface. We and we will create a mock GraphQL client that when you call all cars on it, that means want to return all the cars that are currently in the inventory of the car rental service. It will just return a single car, and it will be this one, this Peugeot with this license plate number, right? So we create an instance of a car, a single one, and hard code the mock to all so that it's all cars method will always return this one car. And then we call Quarkus mock install mock for type. That means we pass this mock instance to Quarkus and say that Quarkus should replace the CDI bean with of type GraphQL inventory client class. It should replace that with this mock that we created here. Yeah. So instead of getting the actual GraphQL instance, you will be using this mock. And then, yeah, then what does the test do? It calls the availability endpoint. Again, it asks for some cars that are available on given between given start date and given end date. Expects that the status code will be 200 and extracts a list of cars, and then we take the first car. Just there's the first car that will be returned. In this case, it will obviously be the Peugeot 406. Then the test creates a reservation on this car. This time we set the car ID to this actual ID of the car that was returned from the mocked inventory service. We submit the reservation, so we post to the reservation resource with this reservation object for the specific car on specific start and end date. Yeah, and again, just like before, here we assert that in the response it returns a reservation object that contains car ID and this car ID has to be the same that the car ID that we actually passed when making the request. And here we verify that this car doesn't show as available anymore. So that means we again call the availability endpoint for the same start date and date. We verify that the status code is 200, but if look inside the actual response and we filter the returned cars by ID, we, we verify that when we filter to only get cars with this ID equal to the ID that of the car that we already reserved, then it finds nothing. That's this has size 0. This this language allows you to look into the point into the body of the response, whether it is in XML or JSON. You can write like query the contents of the response. So in this case, you can filter the returned list of cars like this by a specific car ID and verify that this car is no longer showing as available. Yeah. So that's how mocks work. Another way how to install a mock. Yes, I added this as a comment here. Another way to accomplish the same is that instead of creating a mock using this Mockito AP DSL, you can just write your own class. In this case, the class that implements the GraphQL inventory client, and I created it here. You can also just create the class that you want to use as the mock. So in this case, I did the same, just another way. I have I have an implementation of GraphQL inventory client that simply returns one specific car. I just wrote it uh, as a Java class instead of defining it using the Mockito DSL. And how to install it? You have to use the mock annotation, and when you have beans with a mock annotation, that tells Quarkus automatically to replace any CDI beans of this type of GraphQL inventory client will be replaced with this mock inventory client. So let me run the test again. It fails this time because I am using both approaches at once. In this case, I have to remove this install mock for type because this way I would be replacing the bean twice. Yeah, I would first replace it with mock inventory client. Yeah, with this first this would run, and but that's not replaces it with a not something that's not a normal CDI bean. So I Quarkus can't later replace it again with this mock inventory client annotated with mock. Well, anyway, simply comment out this other approach, rerun the test, and this time everything is passing. So these are two different approaches how to install a mock.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
just add that add mock annotation is not actually required, because if you will go to your mocked class, and if you go to add mock annotation, you should see that it's just add alternative with priority 1, if I remember correctly.
Yes,
Yeah.
but that doesn't
So
mean it's not necessary. Or what do you mean? I
yeah,
can remove
so
it now? or
like this. No, you can just write at alternative at priority one, because this is
oh
actually on
yeah.
CDI mechanism, just like normal
Yeah, it's
CDI mechanism, how to prioritize your mocked class to be injected first, not the real GraphQL client.
yeah, it's a stereotype, which means it basically it behaves as if you wrote these three annotations directly on the class. So I could also replace it with these three. Maybe not all. Maybe not even all. I don't even have to use all of them. But yeah, it works. It works as well. Yes.
Yeah, so I just
Uh,
wanted to point this out, because this is not magic. This is really just plain CDI. Just because you are running everything inside a single JVM on a single class path, in our case, Arc will first pick mock inventory client because it has this priority one in the test.
yes. So now let's have a look at integration tests and native mode. Unless somebody has some questions about what we saw here. Uh, to explain integration tests or the difference between what we mean by integration tests and unit tests in terms of in the context of Quarkus, I will show this diagram from the book. So what we did so far was unit tests in JVM mode. That's this first part of the diagram. Everything runs in a single JVM. There's the application running and the test code that is lives in the same JVM as the application, and the test code talks to the application directly via Java calls. Or we also used HTTP, but it wasn't necessary because the test runs in the same JVM. This is how unit tests work with Quarkus. Integration tests are slightly different. In that case, the test code runs in a different process than the application. You can use integration tests both in JVM mode and native mode. Integration tests in JVM mode, we don't actually really recommend doing this. So this is just more like to be complete, but it doesn't really make a lot of. There's no really good reason to run integration test in JVM mode because you lose uh, the um, the goodies that you get by running in the same JVM, right? Because if your test is running in a different JVM than the application, then the test has to talk to the application using HTTP. If you run in the same JVM, you can use Java calls, but you can also use HTTP if you want to, of course. But in the integration test mode, you all just have to rely on remote protocols like HTTP for not only HTTP, any remote protocol that the application exposes. But so what's the main point of having integration tests? Well, it is native mode because if you use native mode, you also want to test your application, right? And in native mode, it's not really possible to bake the test application into the application itself. Uh, so they have to run in separate processes. So that's the third part of this picture here. Uh, uh, if you run integration test in native mode, you have your test code running in a JVM. The test code itself is not compiled into native. It runs in a JVM, and it talks to the application, which is running in a separate process. And this time, it's not a JVM; it's an OS native process, depending on your operating system. So yeah, of course, then the test code has to talk to the application over a remote protocol, like for example HTTP. And yes, and you lose the ability to for example, do CDI injection, you also lose that in the integration test in JVM mode because you're in a uh, different process. So in integration test, you can't really use injection, which we will see here in a bit. Let's go back to the reservation resource test where we have one example of a test that we will also use as oh yes, this this test reservation IDs thing is also used in native mode. Yes, because we how do you actually declare an integration test? The classic approach that people usually would use is just extend a test, this reservation resource test that you normally use for the JVM mode. You extend that and append IT instead of test in the end, and annotated with Quarkus integration test, which makes it an integration test that just simply gets all the functionality from its superclass, which is the reservation resource test. So this test that I already showed, both of them, yes, this one runs also in native mode. Um, this one where we used a mock. That's another thing that doesn't work in integration tests. So we actually disabled this test during integration test because mocks aren't supported in integration tests. So only this first test, this test reservation IDs, will actually be used when you run the tests in native mode. How do you actually run it? Let's just uh, open a new terminal and do Maven verify and activate the native profile. It will obviously take some time. It will first run the JVM tests. Hopefully it will all pass. And then it will start compiling the application with GraalVM into native mode. And then run this just one test reservation IDs, because this one is disabled during integration test. What I did was I had to enable this P native profile. What that actually does, if you look into the POM, that actually does this. It sets a system property Quarkus native enabled to true and skip integration tests to false. And now it should almost be compiled, hopefully. Let's give it a few more seconds. And now the reservation resource IT is already running. And yes, tests run 2, out of which one was skipped. Yeah, this one was skipped because it's using mocks, so we can't use it in native mode. And yeah, and it
Yeah, so
passed.
about this point, uh, that mock is not available at native mode. It is not available due to reflection. Am I right or not?
It's not exactly reflection. It's that how mocking works is that after actually while booting the application, it replaces some stuff that was baked into the application at build time, basically. So when you actually build your application into native mode, this is not possible anymore. The mocks would have to be baked into it, and just I don't have the more exact details, but it's
It's
not
about to close
possible
the
to.
road. Assumption.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
basically yes, yes. Because here, when you this test already starts, you see that after the test started and after actually the application has already booted up, only then I'm installing a mock. And that's not possible because of the closed world assumption. Yes, in native mode, that's that that's not supported. Here, yeah, the one important note is when you use this in JVM mode, you have to install the mock for a CD for CDI beans before that CDI bean is actually first accessed, right? So this has to be like the very first thing you do in the test. And
Great.
also for that reason, the CDI bean must not have been initialized yet. So mocking is not supported for singleton beans, for example, because singleton CDI beans are initialized eagerly immediately after the application starts, right? So that if that bean was singleton, then at this point it would have been already initialized, and I would not be able to replace it with a mock.
Great. Thanks a lot. I would like to, I don't know if I missed something about the inject mock. Did you talk about inject mock? Uh, the notation inject mock?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not exactly covered in the book, so I didn't prepare for it. But yeah, you can. Yeah, just like from what I remember, just like you can inject a regular CDI bean using inject into your test, you can also write here inject mock, right? And then you would write in a before method or before all, or before each, I don't remember. And here you would, yeah, I don't exactly remember here, but here you would somehow define what the mock does, right? Using the Mockito API. This would inject just some kind of stub into the test, and in the before method you would use the mock you would use the Mockito DSL to actually define what the mock will actually do. So that's another approach to it. Yeah, but I don't remember exactly, so I'm not going to really
No, no worries.
show it right now.
Thanks.
Well, it's like kind of the same thing as you are doing with your Mockito example. You just don't need to statically install mock, like with that Quarkus mode that install mocks for type. This is automatically included.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I would basically do just this in the
Yes.
before method. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And skip the install mock part. Okay. Uh, yeah. What else?
Jan, can
Testing
you
profiles.
can you one more time show the diagram in the book?
Okay. Yes.
So as Jan was saying, that integration tests are like basically intended to test the native application. I just want to mention that this is also happening when you include any of the container image building extensions, which we will cover in chapter 11, I believe. In detail. So when you basically specify for Quarkus to build the Docker image or Podman image with normal Maven or Gradle build, and you will specify that you also want to run integration test, you will see I pasted in the chat that when you will run the integration test, it will actually run the Docker run command with your build image that you just built as part of the build. So it's the same stuff, just instead of the native application on the right, you will have running Docker image. Okay, thanks, Jan.
Okay. One last thing I wanted to show is a brief mention of testing profiles, because you might want to run different tests with different configuration, for example. In this case, um, I installed a mock to replace the GraphQL client that normally would talk to a reservation service. But another option that might another use case would be to replace the URL of the GraphQL client. For example, if you want a specific test to run against a different instance of the inventory service. So that's what you can achieve by using test profiles. A test profile is a class that implements Quarkus test profile, and it can customize a test by lots of different things. For example, probably the most important thing that the test profile can do is override configuration. So if you want, for example, one specific test to run against a different remote service, you can override the URL. So this is how, for example, you would override the URL to which the GraphQL client connects to the inventory. Normally, in application properties, you see that this property, this is the one that I'm talking about. It's set to localhost 8083, which is the port where the inventory service normally starts when you run it on your local machine. But for example, you might want to run a test that talks to a different instance. So in this case, I set it to HTTP example.com. Yeah, I'll run it in a bit. All other stuff that you can do using a test profile is like enable CDI alternatives, change the name of the configuration profile, add specific test resources, disable test resources, and so on. Yeah, but in this case, I just wanted to show how to override the configuration. So I will run this test by overriding the URL for the GraphQL client. How to declare a test to use this profile, where, well, I have this class, and I I will annotate my test with this test profile annotation and specify that this test should be using this specific profile. And because I am actually setting a URL for the GraphQL client, I will remove the mock thingy again. And let's just for fun, hold on, this is the terminal. Yes, let's run the test. Hey, why isn't it failing? It should be failing, right? Because it should be talking to a... Wait, why isn't it failing? Let's run it in the IDE. Shouldn't it be failing? Because I overrode the URL. What did I do wrong here? Test profile, another inventory instance profile. What did I do wrong? Does anyone have an idea?
Try to force the restart of the application.
I'll restart it completely. Maybe this is one of the rare cases where live reload doesn't pick up the changes properly. No, it's still...
Maybe you still have that other at mock.
Oh, yes, this, I have to remove this, of course. Oh, yes. And now you see that the test fails because I'm trying to hack this web example.com, which actually there is actually apparently an application running there. But if I try to call it, with a GraphQL client, just gives me an error. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I overrode the URL and got an error here. Cool. That's about it. What I wanted to show. If there are any questions or what else we would like to show, I don't know.
So I have a question. So if you override the config property and you have like multiple at Quarkus test annotations, how does the Quarkus like testing deals with that fact that you have a profile with a different set of configuration?
You mean I have different tests. I mean different test classes, right?
Yeah. So
Well, then
basically,
each test class can have its own profile, and
yeah.
for each profile specifically, another instance of the application of the testing application will run separately. All the tests that will be using this specific profile will run with one instance. Well, no, for each class, an instance is created. So if I had like two tests that use this profile, the same application instance with this profile would be run twice, once for each test separately,
I
for
don't
each
think so.
test class. Yes,
Yes? Are you
yes.
sure?
Uh, well, maybe
Because
okay, maybe not, but
okay, but I think
any
because
case, in any case, the test using different profile will use a uh, different instance of the application. There is no discussion there.
yeah, so basically Quarkus will try to minimize the restarts as much as possible. But of course, if you are using test profile, you are changing like core functionality of your application, then it actually needs to do the restart. But I would guess, but I'm not sure on top of my head because Jan said otherwise, that it should group all tests with the
Okay,
single
maybe
profile
yeah,
and
okay.
one instance of the application.
Right.
And
If I don't use profiles at all, it just all the tests run in the same with the same instance, right? So I guess you're right. After all, yeah, yeah. I guess it will group them. Yeah.
But I just want to mention this because if you are using test profile like Jan is doing now to just override a single configuration property, that means that every time you run tests, you need to actually start Quarkus now twice. And for every test profile, you will need to actually restart the Quarkus application, and that will add up in your tests. Like the test will take longer time.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Okay. Anything else? I think yeah, we pretty much covered everything that's in the book and a few extra things. I don't know if there's anything else.
Is there any way to change the configuration just using test profile? Or we have another way to do it? For example, using application properties for test, for example.
You mean
If I want to
yeah,
use another,
generally, like you mean like having the application use different values for properties when running tests than when it's running in production, right? Yeah, of course. The I can just prepend dollar test and then write any Quarkus or any configuration property, for example, this one, and then this property will specifically apply only during tests
great.
for all tests in this case.
Then if I want to use the test profile or to use the integration test profile, I can too. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and one of the things that you can do in a test profile, as I already also mentioned, is changing the config profile, which normally by default it is test, right? So that's the test word that I wrote here. But you can have a test profile that changes the configuration profile. So you can have different configuration profiles like test 2, and then you would just write test 2, and then this all the tests that use prof this test profile would be using this value of the property.
Okay, thanks a lot.
But probably better to override it in the test profile than than in the application properties. But yeah, you can achieve the same thing again, but different means.
Okay, we have any question for Jan or Martin? If not, I will go ahead with the draw. Just to repeat here, we are now sponsored by JetBrains, and today we will have a draw with JetBrains license. And thanks, Mursalini. I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly to stay here with us. João Nascimento again with us, and Richard too. We have just three. Martin and Jan will not participate. I will, one moment, I use a website here to put your names. Okay. I will share my screen, one moment. Okay. We have just one JetBrains license. Yesterday, Kevin Dubois talked with us, and we had a winner. And today, let's see the new one. Oh, Mursalini. Great, congratulations. We have a JetBrains license. Okay, let's close my screen. Did you see my screen or not?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Perfect. I am sharing the screen or not? Not. Yes?
Right now, no. I'm
Oh,
not
okay,
seeing any screen.
great. Please, Marceline, send me your email here in my chat, private chat.
The chat box.
Yeah, in my direct message, DM.
Okay.
I will share with you the JetBrains license. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, guys. I think we finished it. Jan or Martin, you want to say something for us or not?
Make sure to check out Quarkus plugin in IntelliJ Ultimate version. Auto
Okay.
completion for Quarkus properties. Awesome.
Great. It's a great plugin. Okay. João, you are here yet? Let's take a screenshot
Oh,
just to finish.
I don't have any. I can't. Sorry.
Oh, no problem, no
Again.
problem. I will try to do this view. Okay, let's do a screenshot. Uh, 1, 2, 3, go. No, sorry. I need to do it again. I think it's okay. One moment. Again, let me close this caption because I need to have a caption. One moment. Hide captions. Okay, again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thanks. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. And the next chapter, do you know who will talk with us?
Well, it will be probably me, and that will be front end and security. Very
yeah,
funny
front.
stuff.
Okay. I saw about Qt. The next chapter, I told that Martin Kova. I don't know.
Maybe we can like try to get somebody from
Oh,
like
okay, no
working on
problem.
it.
I'm just
That would be good.
okay, no problem. Thanks a lot again, and bye bye. Have a nice day
Well,
or night.
Bye.
I don't know. Bye bye.
Bye.
it's night actually.
It's a night. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.